Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here. It's All-Ireland football semi-final and Tailteann Cup final weekend. So myself and Rory O'Neill are joined by Ciaran, Whelan and Eamonn Fitzmaurice. How's everybody doing?
Mikey?
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, it could be frosty relations between the two lads now, obviously, ahead of Sunday.
Yeah. Try the line.
D-Day has arrived.
yeah.
Finally here. Yes, that is Sunday, Dublin v Kerry. Obviously, we got Galway v Derry, which precedes the Tailteann Cup final between Cavan and Westmeath. So we'll get onto the game shortly, but I suppose it'd be good to hear from the two lads just from a player's point of view. All-Ireland semi-finals. Whelo, it wouldn't be cruel to say the old cliche, semi-finals are there for winning.
Yeah, go on, Mikey. That's great. Start with me. Put the boot in straight away. Yeah, great memories of All-Ireland semi-finals. Yeah, absolutely. Which one do you want me to talk about? Mayo 2006, Kerry 2007. Any particular one? No.
Just more about the build-up to them, really, I suppose, and the kind of. It's a big occasion, but it's not the big occasion. And as I said, the cliche does work as a jibe at you, but it's not really why I mentioned it. I suppose there's a nervousness around semi-finals, isn't there? That you're not really too worried about a performance. Nobody remembers, they played off in that All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, but I suppose the context of Dublin Kerry is slightly different in that maybe this game has been the game that's been on the horizon all year, and the fact that Leinster were paired with Munster, we always envisaged we might get to this point. Last year we thought they might have met in the final, didn't materialise. Both got caught in the semi-final. And the interesting thing about it is that probably both teams are coming into the game maybe with some question marks, but maybe not playing as fluid maybe as they would like or as they're capable of. And Dublin probably still have a few doubts hanging over them from early on in the league, even though it looked like they're re-energised in the championship, but haven't really been asked any questions. Kerry have been concerned about being road tested and not getting adequate games to bring them to the level that they should be at, that they're capable of being at. So it's set up to be an intriguing battle, and the dynamic I see, it's not unlike 2009 maybe with the start of the earwigs, and it's hard to believe that you have to go back that far since Kerry actually bet Dublin. Kerry dominated the noughties against us, and we came into that game on the back of 5 Leinster championships and a big expectation that we were ready to come step forward, and Kerry walked all over us because they just had that experience and mental know-how, and were just much more psychologically tuned in than we were at the time. And I think some of that is Kerry's challenge again this weekend, that Kerry are now coming in under massive pressure and expectation, and Dublin have that maybe experience and know-how under their belt, and still have possibly 15, 16 players that have huge experience from the last 5-6 years. So listen, it's an intriguing game, and it has the potential to be an absolute rip-roaring game, and I really hope it is.
Yeah. From a manager's perspective, Eamonn, like All-Ireland semi-finals are they fall between two stools. You can't say it's just lads, it's just a Munster Championship match, don't build it up too much. But at the same time, it's not an All-Ireland final. You haven't got the thing about the suits and the banquet and the hotel and the tickets. So especially for Kerry, tickets isn't usually an issue for semi-finals. So it's a big match played in Croke Park, second biggest match of the year. But at the same time, is there kind of an onus on you to try not to build it up too much as well?
There probably is, Mikey. Look, I think most teams nowadays, they approach every match as if it is just another match, and obviously when you get to this end of the championship, you're playing the best teams and you have to be at your best yourself. I think there's always fierce buzz in the camp at this stage of the year, because all the work that has been done since whenever last December, last January, has all been geared towards this time of the year. And with all the sports science that's involved in the background and everything, players are coming to the boil really physically. So they're, you know, fellas, if you're avoiding injuries and little bugs or sicknesses or anything like that, fellas are really physically where they need to be. So they're enjoying their football. And, you know, the training is all geared towards a big match, and it's all football based stuff, and it's all scenario type situations. And it's really enjoyable football. But yeah, you know, I think all players, this is where they want to be. They want to be playing the big games in Croke Park at this time of the year with the big crowds. And, you know, hopefully there's going to be a huge crowd there over the weekend, but for the Kerry Dublin game on Sunday, that all adds to it. And as a player, like I said, that's where you want to be. And the second part of it is then, as the player, these are the games you're judged on, and these are the games, you know, that when you look back on when you're finishing your career, how did I do on the big days? It's great to play with any inter-county team, and it's great to play well in league and provincial championship games and all that, but the big games and you know, the All-Ireland semi-finals and finals, they're the games that you want to do your job and know that you've helped out the team, and afterwards there's a satisfaction in that if you do fulfill your role.
Yeah. Rory, Eamonn mentioned big crowds over the weekend, and I think they are expecting big crowds, but I don't think I've really I've never known a year like this. Kind of, we mentioned it before here about kind of the promotion of the championships in their new form, and I just don't think there's a very good job being done of it. I think it was yesterday.
You can't do a good job though. You can't do a good. People are running to stand still, Mikey. Yeah. You can't do a good job when you have like take the final 4 weeks of the championship, right? So 2 All-Ireland semi-finals with a Tailteann Cup, followed by 2 All-Ireland hurling semi-finals, followed by 2 All-Ireland football semi-finals with a Tailteann Cup, followed by all the event management and planning that goes into the pageantry around All-Ireland hurling final day, which includes 3 Jubilee teams and God knows what else, followed by all the pageantry that goes around an All-Ireland football final day and 3 Jubilee teams thrown into the mix there as well. Sure, what can they do? Like, you're running your championship off in blitz format. This is a consequence. These are all consequences of it. There's no point in keep going on about it. This is what has been decided. You're also like, that's the first issue. And the second issue is when you've given it no room to breathe, it's very, very difficult to push anything or do anything else around any of the other areas, including marketing and including and then also, obviously, I mean, we keep saying it's 4 weeks too early. And I mean, like, I was down in my own club last night. Whelo, I don't know if you were down there, and you're asking people, and there's a lot of people not going on Sunday because they're going on holidays. It's the first week of the summer where the primary schools are actually fully off. A lot of kids, obviously, and we'll say a lot of parents with primary school children. A lot of them heading down to Kerry direction. Actually, Eamonn, they're all, you know, so there'll be people
welcome them with open arms.
There'll be people passing each other on the road going down. Yeah,
I'd wonder though, Rory, is there a chance that some people don't know it's on either? Because when I say promotion, I also mean kind of just the media coverage, which I think was kind of highlighted yesterday, shall we say. This, a lot of people might be aware of this. The Limerick and Kilkenny hurlers both held their All-Ireland final press nights, which are in the afternoon yesterday. On the same day, an hour and a half apart, or 2 hours apart, obviously on different sides of the country, basically. So that's not very helpful to the GA media. And you can just see it today. Like, there's been, I don't know, like, Eamonn, would there be any harm in like getting Desi Farrell and Jack O'Connor to do a press conference in Port or something on the Wednesday or Thursday? Like, I know they don't want the players talking because their legs will fall off or whatever, but like, the manager's not come up. And I think it used to happen a bit. I think when Guinness was money was slashing around with the giant hurls and all that. They definitely used to do All-Ireland final preview press conferences with the managers. I just wonder, it wouldn't do any harm to have a couple of the protagonists from the biggest matches of the, you know, 2 of the biggest matches of the year speaking on the week of the match.
No, it wouldn't, Mikey. Look, yeah, I don't know. I think it probably is a consequence of a 2-week turnaround. That is probably a factor in it. that, you know, every minute in that kind of a situation is precious with regard to getting ready for the match. And in terms of your priorities, media commitments are going to be at the bottom of it. And, you know, that's just fact. But I do think it's a shame that there isn't, you know, like, look, going back when I was involved, there'd generally be 3-4 weeks between a quarter final and a final, same to a final. There would be a press night in there where I would have been available, maybe another one of the management team, 3 or 4 of the players, and
3 or 4 year subs.
Yeah, 3 or 4 injured players.
Oh, no. There might have been 1 or 2 subs. And, the captain would always have been there anyway, and 2 or 3 other players.
I'm
glad you said that, Whelan.
No, but you know what, though? I can safely say, right, because I have to go to these things, and I can safely say there's only one county out there that only put up subs. And it's not, and wasn't Eamonn's team.
No, it was slightly further north at the Western Seaboard. We have an archive of shocking press, media engagement photographs of you stored away that suggest you didn't mind doing media, and I don't think it kept you awake at night. What the headline on a story might be, in the week of a match.
Jeez, Mikey, this is really turning into,
Happy Thursday, Ciaran. Happy Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think, listen, there was probably that whole time frame, Mikey, things were different that you did of 3 or 4 weeks before matches, and there was probably a little bit more flexibility probably from managers around, commercial aspects, you know what I mean, and different stuff. And that's really, listen, we've seen that over the last 10 years. That's when the media do get access to players through various opportunities like that, and they're certainly being curtailed now through the tight time frame, and managers don't want guys out. For me, it's quite simple. I think there should be just a charter that every team has to buy into, and it's a media requirement for the team participating in the competition that you have to do X, Y, whether that's pre-match or the week of the match, and there's an obligation there. I think that to me is the only way that's going to solve it, because otherwise, you're looking at every, like as Eamonn said, it is well down the list of priorities, and I'm sure it's the last thing that managers want. And it's also a very much the old GA style. Well, geez, if the lads up the road aren't doing it, we're not doing it. You know what I mean? There is that approach to it as well. So it is the time frame. I think that 2-week turnaround that lads, and management probably have 2-3 days to come down after a match to review it, look at where they can improve, and they're straight back in then to looking at the next game and looking at their last run out probably a week before the match, before tapering down and tactically preparing for their opponents. And that's probably where they're investing all their energy. So there's a lot of contributing factors, I think, in my view, that we're just not seeing players out there.
Yeah, I know, and I don't expect any of the 4 managers or county secretaries or county chairmen to care at all. But I think maybe those in
well, they should. I don't know. I like that. Like they should. They should. Yeah. I mean, like if you look, it's very difficult and it's very risky to be obviously comparing yourselves to professional sports. But professional sports obviously are professional, so they know stuff, right? And if you look at the obligations that they'll put in place, like take something like American football, right? Massive money, man. Like they welcome the media into locker rooms, as they call them, after matches. There is fines for individual players. There's a famous clip. Did you ever see Marshawn Lynch? I think it was the Seattle Seahawk, and he turned up and he just gave the same answer to every single question because he hated doing media, but he had to do it. And he just, everything they asked, I'm just here so I won't get fined. And he literally just kept saying that. But like it created a moment and it created a talking point. And like, but they're smart enough to realize that this builds into the buzz around the event, promote the promotional aspect, the ability to market yourself, eyeballs, all sponsorship, everything, it all feeds into it. And whereas the GA seem to be happy enough to be invisible.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to say is the managers don't care, but those in Croke Park might want to have a take look at kind of the websites and the newspapers and see that the vacuum's been filled by the Irish rugby team in New Zealand.
Yeah, like
Irish
who
clubs in,
like seriously, like you know what I mean?
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't. It really wasn't a moan because we have plenty of stuff to be keeping us busy between rugby and women's Euros and Irish teams in soccer and Wimbledon and the Tour de France. We're not the ones losing out. So anyway, we'll get on to the matches. So Saturday evening, Galway v Derry. Rory, it's my two babies. My tip for the All Ireland and my tip for the Ulster Championship. One's already come in, so I'm afraid I have to say goodbye to Derry now, so that Galway can proceed to the All Ireland final, which they're obviously going to win, and anoint me as the greatest GA tipster of all time.
And you know what? Like I'm thinking long and hard. Because that game, like, funnily enough, might be actually more difficult one to call in a lot of ways. And I watched the Galway Armagh game last night. Just it was the other thing. I was kind of sorry. I was a bit late.
Your children weren't with you.
Late. I was a bit late there this morning, so the lads were giving me a bit of stick.
You didn't let your children watch the match, did you, Rory?
No. What again? Like, sure, it was a pleasure to sit through it all again in terms of a game of football. Like, obviously, there was the incident at the end of the normal time, but just one thing with it that struck me. And again, look, I think it would be very interesting to get everybody's views on this, because when I was watching the closing stages again, and the way managers and players and media, I suppose, and analysts, but particularly managers and players, I would suggest, are always looking for patterns, and they're looking for things whereby they can improve. I have a load of buddies who are engineers, and they'll tell you when they're problem solving, it's patterns they go after to see where they can see quirks in systems. And that's basically how they can chase, troubleshoot, and find the solution to whatever it might be. So they conceded 2-1 in the last 6 minutes against Armagh. And when you went back to the Connacht final, which was their previous game, in the 60th minute, it was 2-16 to 13 points, and it finished 2-19 to 2-16. Against Mayo in the Connacht first round game, in the 63rd minute, it was 1-14 to 11. It finished 1-14 to 16 points. And even if you go back to the league final, which they lost to Roscommon, which was a late goal again by Dermot Murtagh. And then I started to go back even further. Now, they were very comfortable in most of their league games, but in the next previous game that we'll say mattered, which was against Monaghan, and pretty much the same team in that playoff, they conceded, I think, was it about, and I meant to check that one, but I suppose, look, there are just three aspects that I'd like to put out there for everyone, right? So the first is that a worrying trend or just a silly coincidence and a figment of my imagination, right? The second thing is, if it isn't a worrying trend, and if it is just a figment of my imagination, why does it keep happening, right? Is it lack of concentration, loss of shape, inexperience back four, lack of depth on the bench? We know Mulcairn is a massive loss, so has that severely weakened them back there in terms of leadership? And then the third aspect from a Galway perspective is, if you're a player or a manager and it's something you're aware of and it's something that you are worried about, what do you do to fix it? Now, obviously, if it's just a figment of my imagination, you can ignore all the rest.
It's definitely not a figment of your imagination, Whelo. The evidence is there, like that this Galway fade out happened. But then you have to could you rule out fitness straight away because their performance in extra time against Armagh? I would suggest that they still had petrol in the tank. So what do you put it down to, Whelo?
Yeah, I'd say it could be just more a mental fatigue rather than a physical fatigue, Mikey. Like, it's not a figment of your imagination, Roy. That's been a trend. I think even if you go back to Mayo last year in the championship as well, there's been a common trend there, and really, I suppose it would be something they'd be acutely aware of. They'll definitely, if anything was going to highlight, or the Armagh situation was going to highlight it, when you're coming into injury time
they were much the better side, really.
Yeah,
they were much the better side than Armagh.
After the first quarter, they took off the second quarter, and then the third quarter they kicked on. So I would say it's going to be something that they will really focus in on, and they will have a few trigger points for that last quarter in terms of keeping the concentration or changing things up to make sure they certainly tighten up, you know what I mean, at the back, that they don't lose concentration, that they be very acutely aware that if they get in a match winning situation that they have to close it out. And it is probably, you know, it is their biggest weakness. And you look how good Shane Walsh was, you know, the last day, but then he gives that crossfield pass, if you remember, you know, Armagh cut it out, and all of a sudden they're up the end, under the other end of the pitch. So it's those game management situations, particularly coming into those closing stages, the last 10 minutes, in terms of keep possession, what they're doing with the ball, playing a little bit smarter, slowing the game down. There's loads of little different aspects that they're going to have to work on in that last quarter. Like, the fascinating thing about it is Derry like early goals, not late goals. Do you know what I mean? So you know, that's another aspect that Galway have to be really focused in on, and they would be really trying to stop Derry from getting that early momentum, because if there's any team that can game manage and close out a game, it's going to be Derry. And you know, even though they, you know, you could argue that Donegal get ahead of them, but if they get in a match winning situation, they can adapt their game plan, and they can change it around to close the game out. So listen, it is, game management has been Galway's question mark, and there's no doubt about it. I felt, listen, they came of age against Armagh, you know, some of their forwards, you know, Finnerty, Tierney, you know what I mean, Tilly McDade in the middle of the park, I think they had 11 scores, all the forwards scored, you know. New players really stepped up to the fore for them, and you felt that was kind of the real, maybe not changing of the guard, but the real turning point for this team. But by God, they have to back it up and this weekend, and they're facing a different challenge in Derry. Massively different challenge.
Yeah, that is the interesting thing, Eamon, isn't it, that Derry do kind of come out of the blocks very quickly. But Galway, like, Padraic Joyce is a smart man. He's been in charge of this team for 3 years now. He's aware of this. Is it something like, do you think there could be that this is the payoff in some way, that the way that they play, that maybe they put so much effort in, or maybe that they try so hard to get 6-7 points ahead of a team, and that for some reason this happens and they've been surviving it? So is he not that he's happy with it, but is he saying, is there some kind of a game plan, a bit like Derry, that their aim is to get so far ahead that if a team comes with a late surge, they can absorb it, because he has to be aware of this fade out, and he seems to be a very good manager. So if it could be fixed, or if he wanted to fix it, could he not have fixed it by now?
Well, they're trying to fix it, I'd say, Mikey. He's running out of lives, because Mayo got it back to a point. Armagh obviously got back level, and it took it to penalties. In both those games, they should have won comfortably. Roscommon got it back to a goal at the end, and again, you know, they were comfortably ahead. But look, I imagine they've practiced that exact situation in training in the last.
How would you do that though, Eamon? How would you replicate the situations where you have to obviously factor in fatigue? Your shape might be all over the shop because you've made 4 or 5 different substitutions. You might have picked up an injury or a black card. Like, I mean, how difficult a situation like that is it to actually recreate?
It's not that difficult, Rory. You can put all of those situations into a scenario that you're like, let's say you replicate exactly what happened in that Armagh game the last day. You say, okay, lads, this team, it's the 70th minute. There's 7 minutes of injury time. There's 8 minutes of injury time coming. This team is up 6 points. That team is down 6 points. The team that are down 6 points, we're going to give you possession with a free in the half back line. You go into your 2 teams there now. You've 2 minutes to sort it out. What are you doing? What are the team that are 6 points ahead doing that is going to ensure that you're going to see the game out? And how do you manage the game out? Ciaran mentioned some of the things you can do there. You know, they have to make sure that when they're in possession themselves, they're not getting turned over. Shane Welch in that situation, that he's gone down into the corner, taking his man on, winning a free. Ball is put down, it's taken an eternity to take the free, it's breaking up the momentum, you know, all those kind of small things. I thought in the hurling last weekend, for example, if you're looking for how do you manage that situation in the Galway Kilkenny or Galway Limerick game, right at the end, Limerick had a free, before the free was even taken, Kyle Hayes went back into his own full back line, because the only way that Galway were going to get back into the game was a goal. Long ball in, who's under us? Kyle Hayes. In those situations that Galway were in against Armagh, Paul Conroy should have been just parked back there. He should have been just parked back there in the small square. And if a high ball came in, he would have been there to attack it, at least break it out. I mean, one of the goals, I think it was the goal in extra time, the ball actually hopped inside the 13-yard line. No way that should be happening. Someone should be getting some kind of a hand in it. I remember in the 2013 game against Dublin, where we were, and not so much the 2016 game, but the 2013 game, after they got the goals, Paul Flynn just went back in front of the full back line. We were putting ball in on top of Ciaran Donaghy. Flynn was there contesting it, breaking it out. You know, that's managing that situation out. It's just making it very, very hard for the team that are behind to get a goal. So I think Galway will have practiced those kind of things. The obvious one to me is Conroy or Killian McDade, who's comfortable defensively, going back and being an extra player in there and saying, look, lads, we're not going to concede from a high ball. If they come through, we're going to foul them. They're not going to get 6 points in that period of time, no way. And at the same time, try and get a score at the other end of the field if you can. It's the goals that feed a comeback like that. Like
I think Eamonn, a lot of the game scenarios, it can depend on how far you're ahead. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, if it's a 2-point margin, it's a different maybe conversation. Where if it's a 6-7 point gap and you're comfortable and you have 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes to go, and you know that, well, this team, they're not going to clip 7, 8 points to win it. The only way they're going to really get momentum is to get a goal. So it's slowing the game down and getting someone back into that position. But it depends, you know, the game scenarios depends on the margin you're ahead, the different factors. You know, they probably would have even be preparing to be, you know, setting up game scenarios where you're down that one man, you know, or if the team have an extra man and there's only 2 points in it, what are you doing in a situation like that if you're down to 14? So all those things should be played out in the training field, I would have thought.
Yeah. Eamonn, if we look at some of the matchups, then we've rightly been singing the praises of this Galway forward line, and as I think Ciaran said, they all scored from play against Armagh. They're sensational. It's, you know, it's a little bit like, say, the Dubs in their pomp. You know, if you know, Comer and Walsh have an off day, well then maybe Tierney and Finnerty will come into their own, and like they'll be the guys, or maybe it'll be Conroy from midfield, or now we know it could be Killian McDade from midfield because he scored 1-2 pretty much in extra time the last day. But if there's a team with a defence to A, wrap up their best forwards, and B, have defenders who will have the Galway attackers worrying about how much they have to defend as well, it's Derry. So the matchups in that Derry defence are going to be quite interesting, aren't they?
They're going to be intriguing. I think an interesting one is going to be who'd pick up Shane Welch. Like, you'd imagine probably Chrissy McCaig, but is he going to follow him out the field? I know Chrissy McCaig plays out the field for Slapnail and Nicebis, you know, centre back and so on. Or will Rory Gallagher prefer him to be closer to goal? The Rodgers Comer one, I think that Rodgers will probably have to go back into the full back line for this game again. I don't think they'll be playing him in the middle of the field. And in the league game in Owenbeg, Comer actually caused Rodgers a lot of bother. He was, you know, it was the one time this year I've seen Rodgers really under pressure. And for one of the Galway goals, Comer actually turned over Rodgers coming out. So that'll be an interesting matchup. But as you said, Mikey, one thing with the Galway lads now is, you know, in a previous existence, we would have been saying about you have to have Shane Welch and Comer nailed down, Conroy nailed down. If you nail down the three of them, you're probably going to beat Galway. But the way that Rob Finnerty in particular has stepped up, I think he's got, what has he? He's 12 points from play so far in the championship this year, which is a huge return. And he's been getting better. He was brilliant in the Connacht final. He was excellent again the last day. Killian McDade has won 7 scored from play. Johnny Heaney's getting in the scoring act. Patrick Kelly is a good man to get goals. So they have a good spread of scorers, and that is going to be, you know, a challenge for Derry. Some of the teams that they've beaten so far, they've had a couple of out and out specialist scorers that teams depend on. Matthew Tierney, I didn't mention him, he's come into form. The last day he hadn't been having the best championship, but he played really well the last day, and even scoring the winning penalty will give him an energy and a kind of a feel-good factor in the lead into the next game. So those matchups are going to be intriguing, but I think the big ones are still going to be the likes of McCaig on Shane Welch and Comer being marked by Rogers, and Conor Glaston and Conroy in the middle of the field as well. Or could they put Killian McDade on Conroy or Killian McDade on Conor Glass? I don't know. There's a lot of big matchups.
Who picks up Shane McGuigan then at the other end from a Galway perspective? Sean Kelly. Yeah.
It would seem the natural fit. It's huge for Whelo. It's huge for Galway that he got his reprieve, isn't it? Because he does seem like the man for that job, and that is the most important job in the Galway defence on Saturday evening.
Yeah, he had to get his reprieve, Mikey. There's no doubt about it. But like, I think we can't get away from lads that, like, Derry, to me, I know we're talking a lot about Galway. I still believe, that Derry will dictate the terms of this game, as they always do. And it leaves Galway with having to see how they approach them. And we all know how well Derry can defend and the system that they have in play. But they're also, I think they really have evolved in terms of their attacking game and not getting men ahead of the ball. We know they do that, but they'll attack with 15 as well. And I think, the likes of Clare, and everyone was quick to write Clare off afterwards, but before the game, they were talking Clare up as being a Division 2 side and a solid Division 2 side. Clare got absolutely suffocated by Derry because they kind of dropped back and they tried to mirror them, and Derry committed 15 men forward. Even Lynch came forward, and they made it extremely difficult. And Clare struggled in their transition then to get up the field, and it allowed Derry to reset very, very quickly. And for me, Derry still possess the 15 players that work harder than anybody when they don't have the ball. And even looking, preparing for this weekend, even you look at Dublin and Kerry, and sometimes the work rate mightn't be there for some of the forwards. Derry are bought in, lads, 100% in terms of what they do when they don't have the ball. So I think it's going to be, and we know they have the quality players, as we've talked right throughout the team. You know what I mean? They have those guys that can match ups, and they have strong players right the spine of their team. And they have some other guys, the likes of Cassidy, who's been very good. Con Doherty's been very good. They have other guys around the edges that are making massive contributions. So, how do Galway set up? If Galway, again, they're caught with that dilemma in terms of, do they try and mirror them? Do they bring it into a slugfest? Personally, I think Galway have to play with a little bit of a risk, and they have to back their forwards a small bit and hold a couple of lads up the field. So you're not giving Derry that opportunity to come down and attack them with 15 men. I think Galway have to try and pin Derry back a small bit. I think the kickouts are going to be very, very important. I think Galway, if you look at the Galway stats, I think they go nearly more than 50% of their kickouts are always long, because they don't trust really themselves. Maybe they don't trust themselves off the short kick out. So I think that's going to be fascinating in terms of maybe trying to get, if they can win 50% of them, they can get at Derry quicker. If they hold their shape. So I think it's going to be a fascinating tactical battle, and I think Galway's biggest challenge is not allowing Derry to absolutely dictate the terms of the game, which they've done in every game so far.
Yeah, and they've done that primarily, I suppose, by racking up an early score, and that's been coming via goals. Eamonn, Colin O'Rourke's been pretty consistent on this point that he doesn't consider Derry to be true All-Ireland contenders because he doesn't think they're scoring enough points. 18 against Tyrone, 12 against Derry, 12 against Monaghan, 16 against Donegal, and then was it 13 the last day out against 13 against Clare. Is that a worry, or should we look at the other side and say they're focusing on getting goals and that's something they're good at, and they're getting goals from full back line through every line of the pitch? They have people contributing goals. So is it a worry that they're not scoring more points, or is it a worry for Galway that they're scoring so many goals?
Yeah, no, I understand Colm's point, all right, Mikey, but I think some of the goals they've got, they're going for goals. Do you know what I mean? That when there's definitely a determination when they get into a certain part of the pitch that their first option is to go for goal. And then if the goal chance disappears, they'll take the point. Then similar to the way Conor O'Callaghan plays, and as the championship goes on and they come up against better and better teams, maybe the goal chances won't be as plentiful and they'll be forced to take more points, and that'll push up their points total naturally anyway. But I think if they keep getting goals, they're not going to be too worried about their points total, and Galway have conceded goals this year, so they're going to see it as an opportunity this weekend. If they were playing against Kerry, have been the most meagre defence so far this year. If they were playing against Kerry, maybe it's a slightly different conversation. Would they score enough points in that game? But I think Ciaran's point is very much on the money with regard to how can, and I don't know if I have the answer. How can Galway get this game on their terms? Because for Derry, it's quite simple. When they have the ball, they make the pitch huge with depth and width. They get men forward and they create huge space in the middle part of the field where they're very athletic and they can run through. When they don't have the ball, they completely squash the field. They squash the attacking zone for the opposing team. How can Galway reverse those terms? And I think part of it is, like Ciaran said, leaving bodies up the pitch. If you've got Shane Welch and Damien Comer, maybe not so much because he's a good tackler as well, but Shane Welch and Rob Finnerty on the 13-metre line, even when Derry are attacking, do Derry leave 2-3 players back to mind them? Does Oren Lynch, is he forced to stay in goals then? And then are you stretching the pitch a small bit from the Galway point of view? Because if they just all drop back, if Galway all drop back, Derry are quite happy with that because they all go forward and they all attack together. So there might be a bit of bravery needed from Galway there, and I'll be interested to see what they do in that situation. Can they force Derry to leave some few bodies at home when they're in possession and not have everybody going forward together? So we'll see, but it should be intriguing, definitely.
Yeah, it's one of those, styles make fights, and this is one of those. Rory, how do you see it going then? Give us a prediction.
Still, like, do you remember we were here last week and you asked me and I said, I don't have a clue. And I'm going to stick with I don't have a clue. But genuinely, just like there's trying to do something on it. When you throttle a team the way Galway throttled Derry in the league, is that worth something? I'd probably say it might be. I think Galway, given the way Galway came through a fairly battle-hardened campaign, I think is that worth something? Definitely. Given what happened the last day against Armagh, I think that's surely worth something to them. They've beaten as much quality in a Division 1 context as Derry have. And I think Galway are a team that just historically and traditionally, even going back to 98 and 01 when they last met in semi-finals, that where they tend to grow in confidence the longer the year goes on. I think they've probably more quality in their forward line, but I probably think Derry might win. That's just crazy thing about it, but genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if we could be in for a long night. I keep predicting extra time.
You do.
I keep getting it wrong.
Well, you got it right once. How about you, Whelan?
Yeah, intriguing game, Mikey. But I still can't get away from the fact how Derry dictate the game, and I think Rory Gallagher has been excellent at how he's tweaked his setup for each opponent, and he'd be aware of the threat of the Galway forwards, and you could maybe see Derry sitting a little bit deeper than even they were possibly against Clare and stuff like that. And I think I just, when it comes to the buy-in, and I really go back to that buy-in and the work rate without the ball, I just think Derry for me might just edge it. But having said that, like Rory said, they've been writing off Galway nearly all year, and your question marks hanging off Galway, and they keep delivering, and you feel they have come of age and they have the firepower in their forward line. But I just think when you play against Derry, it's a different game of football, and they have massive momentum, support, and all their players are playing top confidence. And one of the key things that even stuck out for me, even watching them against Clare, is their communication on the field with each other is top class. It's top class. They are all listening to each other. The likes of Glass, McGinless are directing guys where to go. They're very, very well organized, particularly when they don't have the ball. And so when I break it down to game management, that's why I just give the nod to Derry.
Okay, Eamonn, your favorite question? Who's going to
win? Yeah, I'm with the lads. It's very hard to call it. Again, I would see extra time as a huge possibility, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at Galway and Derry at penalties again, Mikey. So
and then you'd favour Galway because they've been there before.
You would absolutely, and it could come down to both goalkeepers as well. Both goalkeepers have a bit of a wobble in them, and now Oren Lynch, the last day I felt for the 2 goals, he played a lot of football outfield underage, and you'd know that his body shape for the 2 goals wasn't great against Clare, and I imagine he's worked in that in the meantime, so that could be a factor as well. He might be a bit better in that situation, but yeah, very tight game again, and extra time and penalties to separate them.
Wow, okay. We're in for a humdinger on Saturday evening, can't wait. It's hard for me to choose between 2 of my children, 2 of the teams that I've backed this far into the championship, but I think
you have to have a favourite. You have to have a favourite.
Yeah, that's the unwritten rule, isn't it? I'm going to say Galway are going to win. I do think. I just think they've got too many forwards. And I like Eamonn's idea of actually playing with a bravery and leaving a couple of lads up. So Padraic Joyce, we know you're listening. Do what Eamon said there, and get my boys into the final. But I'll obviously be happy if either get into the final. There, I love all my children equally. Right, on to Sunday. Kerry v Dublin. They're finally facing off against each other again. It's been a while in championship, obviously a few years since they've
bit of an old game.
They have met, yeah, exactly. So go to you first, Whelo. It's funny, the limited enough preview material of this match we have thus far, it hasn't been. I think it will ramp up in the next couple of days, and we'll get lots of good stuff to read about it and listen about it, including this podcast. But at the moment, it's all being very reductive. It's down to if Con O'Callaghan and James McCarthy play, Dublin will win. If they don't, Kerry will win, which is a little simplistic, I suppose, because if the 2 of them were fit, I don't think everybody would be saying Dublin are definitely going to win. It's kind of become the hot button issue this week.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, listen, if the 2 of them weren't to play, it significantly damages Dublin chances. But even if they are playing, it's still, very much a 50-50 game. So it's not it's funny. Like, you sat down this week and you're preparing for the weekend, and you look back over games, and you watch Dublin against Kildare, and you see that high energy and how ruthless they were and kicking the ball, and you come away feeling, Jesus, yeah, there's another kick in them. And then you sit down and you watch Kerry maybe against Mayo with a dry ball in Croke Park, or you watch Kerry against Dublin in the league, even though it was back in February, and you look at the threat that Kerry hold up front and their ability to kick the ball and open up teams, and the top class players they have. So you come down off the high fairly quickly of watching the Dublin Kildare game, and you say, shit, this is going to be this is going to be a tough encounter. So like it's that's probably what makes it so fascinating. A contest that, listen, there's a few things in my view from a Dublin perspective coming into the game. Number one, there obviously is the potential injury to Con O'Callaghan, and I think that makes a huge difference in terms of what he offers them in the forward line, and even the different dynamic of watching him in there against Kildare, and when he wasn't there against Cork. Paddy Small was in there, and Paddy Small tends to like to come out under the Cusack stand, and the movement was slightly different, even though they were trying to play and hold 2 or 3 deep inside. So he has been so important in terms of clutch moments, and you look back at the goals that he's got in big games in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think him being involved is hugely important from a Dublin perspective, as is Clifford. But you got to suspect that Clifford is going is going to be on that pitch and he's going to perform. He finished the game against Mayo. I think he will be fine, and Kerry will be at full strength. So you're hoping that Dublin get everybody on the pitch, because you look at the subs bench the last day, and you look at, if this game goes into that last 10-15 minutes, and you look at the subs that Dublin were able to bring in 16 and 19 and 13, and they were able to come in and make a massive difference. Dublin are going to have to try find a couple of heroes if they're in that position, where Kerry look to have that little bit more depth. If Jack Barry's back, there's David Moore and start. You have Tony Brosnan, you have Killian Spillane, possibly. You have Paul Murphy. You've got like 4 or 5.
The Kerry squad is absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah, and that is going to be a crucial factor if this game was to go to extra time or going down that stretch in the last 10 minutes. So that's, even with the lads, it's going to be a significant challenge for Dublin, I think.
Yeah, just to go back to Conor Callum point just once more, Eamon, I don't want to labour it. I know he's not the be all and end all here, but when you were managing Kerry, there was probably a few lads who would have kept you awake at night before a match. Michael Murphy, Bernard Brogan, can a team, can one player be that pivotal to an opposition team, and can you as a manager, can you be too focused on like whether that guy plays or not, or if he does play, putting too much emphasis on his, because that's the thing, isn't it? You tie him up, and then the hope for Desi Farrell is that it's Dean Rockers, Kieran Kilkenny, or somebody else who comes in and does the damage because you're obsessed with Conor Callaghan. Is there a danger of putting too many eggs in that basket as an opposition manager?
There possibly is, Mikey, but it's very unusual to get to this stage of the championship and for one player to be so significant for one of the big guns. And it's just, look, I think we saw with Dublin during the league, the way that they were playing. Con didn't have his best year last year. He had, he was carrying injuries. He never kind of got going to the levels that we know he's capable of. And Dublin had become fairly pedestrian in their attacking play, even in the championship last year. That continued in the league without him this year. Since he came back, then they went in their training camp to Portugal. They obviously tweaked their forward play out there. They came back, they were a different item altogether in the championship, and he was central to that. And we saw the proof again against Cork the last day that when he wasn't playing, they weren't as dynamic up front, they weren't as direct. He just has a fear factor about him, both when he's on the ball and he takes such watching, he opens up spaces for the rest of them, he brings the rest of them into it. Costello in particular thrives when Con is there beside him. So, sometimes a forward like that can almost be cowed a bit if the main man is playing and it impacts in their game, whereas Costello seems to thrive when Con is there beside him. So I think he's huge for Dublin, and it is, while everyone is saying it this week that if he's out, it definitely tilts it a bit more in Kerry's favour. I think it does. To be fair. I think if he's playing, it's very 50-50, very even game altogether. But if he's out, it is it's
advantage Kerry.
It's advantage Kerry. It's a huge opportunity for Kerry if he's not playing. But I imagine with the significance of the game, if he's anywhere right at all, he'll be there. Obviously, if he's a fracture or if he's something that just automatically rules him out, well, that's that. But if he has, I heard it was a dead leg, so I don't know if.
Ciaran Kane, I think in the Irish News, I don't know where he got it, but like a hairline fracture.
Listen, lads, we're like the Kerry lads with the rumours that are
we need it.
You know what I mean? We're hearing. I've heard about 4 or 5 different injuries that he's had. His leg is hanging off him.
And there was no fights in training this week down in Fishtown Stadium, man. It was there.
That did I heard, Rory? That's disappointing, though.
I have an exclusive. Conor Callaghan won't be playing because he's the new Dublin hurling manager. That's what he is. Taking over from Maddie Kenny.
No, that's Whelo. Whelo's resurrecting his minor
hurling career.
Minor inter-county hurling career.
Rory, you've been on the Kerry bus all year. You said they wouldn't lose a game, and they've almost have it. But in championship, Eamonn made reference to it earlier. Like we all talk about their dazzling forward line, and maybe you need to take into account the quality of the opposition they play. But so far they've conceded 8 points, 11 points, and 13 points. And a 13 against the Mayo team, fighting for survival. Mayo team have been one of the top 3 teams in the country for the last 10 years. So this Kerry defence is miserly.
Yeah, like you're not going to get anything easy. They have obviously tightened things up. Tig is obviously sitting a little bit deeper, gives the full backline a little bit more protection. But like in the traditions of most Kerry defences as well, they play from the front. Like they'll go man to man by and large back there, and they have so much pace. They're unbelievably athletic. Jason Foley is like, I mean, he was a fella that maybe people in Kerry and Eamonn can probably tell us more, were suspicious about whether or not he could solve the full back position for. I think he's been arguably up there with Chrissy McCaig in terms of being able to do that job. From a Kerry perspective, like I'd imagine a nightmare because he's tall, he's rangy, he's very, very quick as well. So like people talk about the pace that they have in their forwards, they've got unbelievable pace in their defense as well. And they'll have a few key questions. I think the big one, obviously, given like I was in there the last day for Dublin Cork, Ciaran Kilkenny is still an extremely dangerous player from a Dublin perspective, and is the kind of fella that will probably need an individual man marker, have a Kerry a like for like on that sense. And obviously you don't like, I mean, he does roam. I would suggest I can't see Tig switching his game up all that much, so you will probably need to detail. Does Paul Murphy come in and do it? Is it Brian O'Biogli? I think that is definitely one problem from Kerry's point of view. The other issue I think is, I mean, like we mentioned before, and the lads mentioned on the night of the quarterfinals weekend, is Dean Rock, and while he is imperious from dead balls, doesn't actually offer you a whole pile from open play. And Kerry, you mentioned, and to go back to the point, Mikey, you talk about miserly defence. They cough up very, very few scoreable frees. So if you're going to be dependent on 8 or 9 points from Dean Rock from frees, from a Dublin perspective, that is another problem that the Dublin management might have to look at in terms of trying to up their scores from play. But I think, most of it, I mean, even the fixture itself, I know we spoke at the very start of the podcast about the lack of coverage around it. You would hope that the momentum will build. I do think Sunday will be fantastic. I always find it amusing, actually, that some media people will always try accuse us and RTÉ of having some sort of, Dublin Kerry bias. Like, I mean, me having a Dublin Kerry bias, but anyway, but it is, whether we like it or not, it's by a mile the most glamorous fixture in GAA. By a mile, it's the most glamorous, right? It's going to have the biggest audience of the year in the TV sense. When is the last time that the fixture disappointed? I mean, probably back to Startled Earwigs time. Even Dublin in their pomp over the course of the last 10, 12 years, Kerry would always have given them plenty of it. And I'm sure Eamonn can attest to that. And we won't be knocking you again, Eamonn, this week, all right? But look, it's a fixture rich in tradition, unbelievable characters in both counties, right up to modern times. There's always loads of narrative, subplots, intrigue, injury rumor. And I think it's set up once again. And I, for one, I just can't wait for it.
Yeah. It could be a humdinger. Whelan, looking at the matchups at the other end of the field, then it's kind of a, it's the loaves and the fishes situation in a way for the Dublin defence, because the Kerry attack is like, if they want to play, 6 scoring forwards, they can. Yeah. They probably won't. They'll probably throw in a couple of a workman like wing forward here or there, but like there's threats everywhere, and that's before you get into like their midfield kind of surging forward as well, which obviously Dublin have in Fenton. But Dessie Farrell will have to prioritise a couple of Kerry forwards and then kind of hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the concerns a lot of Dubs would have coming in, is whether the Dublin defence can withstand the power of the Kerry forward line. And it's an interesting dynamic, Mikey, because I think like Dublin will take risks. They always take risks, and they will probably look to play with 6 forwards and try occupy Morley if they can, or at least force maybe an Adrian Spillane or someone to have to drop a little bit deeper if they want to free him up, because the Dublin three inside forwards are play with incredible depth, and even off their own kick out. You go back to, I know I'm drifting on to kick outs, but I'll come back to matchups. But if you go back to Eamonn spoke about, they used to go after Cluxton's kick out and try crack him, and had success in that in 2016, and I think went in 5 points up, and Kerry in the league this year kind of played with a bank of 4-4-4 and tried to really press Dublin. But Dublin have really changed that, in that off place balls or off kick outs, they have 3 men back in on the edge of their own square. The 3 full forwards are back in, literally sitting on the Kerry goal line. Now what that does, that pulls back 3 Kerry players immediately, and possibly pulls a fourth back, and it takes, they don't have the opportunity to go with those banks of 4. They don't have the opportunity to push up. They nearly got caught. I don't know if anyone remembers in the league game where Dublin got over the top and there was a hand pass into Dean Rock, and it should have been the back of the net. So I think like Dublin will take risks, and I think at the other end of the field then is, Johnny Cooper likes to come out and help to sweep around the breaks, and then he tries to drop off. And if Kerry win those, they can get at the Dublin defence quite early, and I think that's what they'll try and do, because they're excellent at kick pass and they're excellent at their interchange play in the forward line. But I think, Mikey, coming back to matchups from a Dublin perspective, John Small, Sean O'Shea, I think is ultimately a given. Who picks up David Clifford? Probably Mick Fitz. Davy Byrne came on the last day as a sub, but Davy Byrne I think is carrying an injury and may need an operation post-season, and they're trying to kind of maybe patch him up, and he mightn't be at the right level. The Evgeny, and I think Paddy Clifford, to me, Paddy Mayo put Lee Keegan on him to try and curtail his influence, and I think he really makes that forward line tick. So is Merchant given the job of following him? Lee Gannon marked him for the league game this year and struggled on him. The first 15-20 minutes, Paddy Clifford was very influential. And so then who goes on Geaney then? Who's also stays in and plays inside with David Clifford. So it's a tough one for Dublin, but I think they'll definitely try to get the Shawnee O'Shea, the Clifford one, and the 2 Clifford ones right, and then it could end up with Gannon might be back on Geaney, or they could hold Merchant back on Geaney and take the risk of Gannon following Clifford out the field. But it's you have to, Dublin have to curtail the influence of that. If Kerry get momentum, and particularly with a dry ball, hot day, if Kerry bring their A game in the forward line, Dublin could struggle defensively.
Yeah, I actually think we could probably talk about this game all day, but we won't. So we'll get to that point, Eamonn. How do you see this going? And I suppose as a supplementary question to you, how much have Dublin improved since that league match? Admittedly played in horrific conditions below in Tralee, but how much have Dublin improved, and have they improved enough to possibly beat Kerry, in your opinion?
They've improved an awful lot, Mikey, but even that night at the league game, Ciaran mentioned that Dean Rock chance. There was the disallowed goal, the incorrect black card, and Kerry went to town when Niall Scully was off the pitch during that 10-minute period. So there was a lot of things that went against Dublin that night. So I wouldn't be reading too much, and it's so long ago, I wouldn't be reading too much into that game. But look, it's intriguing. Ciaran mentioned about the Dubs, playing with 6 up, and that's going to be an issue for Kerry, because all season long, Tadhg has been able to play that role that he's played with such effect, pretty much because every team has dropped a body onto David Clifford. So it has meant that Tadhg has been free, and it has allowed him to play that role. Whereas if Ciaran Kilkenny is centre forward and Tadhg has marked him well in the past, Tadhg has to go with him, and you can't leave Ciaran Kilkenny free, so he has to go with him unless Kerry reshuffle at the back and try to get Tadhg to sweep from somewhere else. But if Tadhg is marking Ciaran Kilkenny, who's gonna mind the house then? So there are plenty of intriguing things. It might be a case of who's going to blink first with regard to the defensive systems at each side, and traditionally that's why the Kerry Dublin games have been so good, that both teams have really tried to go for it. Jack definitely has made Kerry defensively way more solid than we have been in a long time. And, are they going to go away from that this Sunday? So there's huge amount of questions, huge amount of intrigue. And obviously I'm hoping for a Kerry win for the first time in a long time.
Are you predicting one, Eamonn?
I'm predicting one, yeah.
Attaboy, Eamonn.
I'm hopeful, Mikey, but look, I've said this, I've been saying it all year long, for the lads themselves, for the players, they have a good level of experience now. 2019 was probably slightly a bit soon for a lot of them. They would have done, they could have won the All-Ireland the first day. Dublin showed their experience the second day in the replay that time. And they still have that winning experience in their squad, Dublin. But the Kerry lads are 3 years further down the line now in terms of their physical development, their football development, the disappointments that they've had in the meantime that should sharpen their focus. So it's not a case of now or never for them, but they're in a very strong position to really go after the game. And I'm hoping that they just have enough to do it now. I think that, the change in the terms of the strength and depth has flipped a small bit in those 3 years. The Dubs were still that bit ahead in 2019 in terms of the strength and depth. I think that's flipped the other way now, and that could be a key factor by the end, hopefully.
Okay. Rory, how do you see it going?
Yeah, I'm not changing. The Kerry will win the All-Ireland. The only thing, there's only one small caveat, is just they are under pressure. And they are still unproven and untested in this particular bunch, in that they have necessarily failed because it's still too early, but they have, they've been caught a couple of times now so far in their football careers by teams that certainly on 2 occasions they were much better than and should have won the game. And from a Dublin perspective, I think it's a great position to be going in, even though you wouldn't know it locally. I was in a club last night and I said to this young lad, or this old guy who works below, I said, "Are you going to the match on Sunday? Yeah, how do you see it going?" Dublin will win. And I said, "All right, you're very confident. Have you seen Kerry?" "No." Okay, fair enough. But I think if from a Dublin perspective, I think it's a good position to go in. Now, look, there's pressure with Dublin too. It's a different type of pressure this weekend in that they're going in not as favourites. But look, there's always pressure. Like Whelo will tell us better than anyone. Anytime you put on a Dublin jersey, there's savage pressure that goes with it. But I think there's an acute pressure on Kerry because this is the time now. They really do need to beat Dublin, and I think they will.
Okay, Whelo.
Well, Mikey, I tipped Kerry at the start of the year. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's one more sting.
One more. Oh yeah, sure. Hang on, no, we'll give him one more. We've been hearing that for.
But I think if you look at still the age profile of some of another 4 or 5 lads and where they're at, you're hoping that you're hoping within Dublin that there is, and you get that sense that this a victory this weekend or another All-Ireland would actually probably mean more to them maybe than some of the others. And I know that sounds very cliché-ism, but an annoyance within the camp, and you get a sense that this one would mean something more to them, and that might energize performance out. You still know there's performance within Dublin, but when you go back and you just look at the 2 teams possibly on paper and the depth that Kerry have, and solidity they brought to their defence, and the top class forwards they have, I think if I fully agree with Rory, all the pressure's on Kerry, but I think their time has come maybe to deliver, and I think they just might nick it, but I hope I'm wrong.
Hey, okay, so we're all going for Kerry. So that's me making it a Kerry Galway final, which will be very retro, 1940s, 1960s style to it. Yeah. A quick word on the Tailteann Cup final, Rory. It's the we won't say curtain raiser because that is always seen as a derogatory term. It is the first match on Saturday in Croke Park. Cavan and Westmeath, who as big traditional football counties, have been rewarded for taking the Tailteann Cup seriously, and Cavan will go in as favourites, but there's a good feeling under Cooney and Westmeath that he's kind of building a team that can challenge at higher levels in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, and they were very impressive in the semi-final win over Offaly. You know, people can maybe argue the toss on whether Offaly, you know, like the performance from Offaly on the day wasn't necessarily up to scratch, and more Cavan given maybe a better game by Sligo in their semi-final, which might give them that little bit of an edge in terms of the prep for the final. But Westmeath, I know some people have mentioned the fact that, like, for the Tailteann Cup to have some sort of meaning and sense of place and to kind of really establish itself, maybe a Westmeath victory is a better outcome here, because when you have a situation where you come with a new competition and more or less everybody says from the start Cavan were too good to not only even be in Division 4, but they were probably too good to be in Division 3 as well, and everybody says, though, they're going to win it easily enough. And if that transpires, then I think it, you know, like, it would be a pity, because I think there's been so much positivity around the competition from the very start, and we've seen some really good stories, penalty shootouts as well, and I think it has a huge potential to grow, and it will grow even further. It'll get a good spotlight on Saturday, 3:00 throw in. I think Westmeath have enough firepower up front. Heslin is playing well. I think they can match Cavan in midfield, where I think they probably have a little bit of a weakness is you potentially have one of the best keepers in the country playing for Cavan. And look, I just think they'll probably have a little bit more experience, a little bit more physical power with the likes of McKiernan, and ultimately, you would have to go Cavan, given their tradition, the fact that they're recent Ulster champions as well. And I think they've kept everybody on board from the very, very start. Nobody has left and gone to America like on the rest of the Exodus. So yeah, I'm hoping for a very good game and another very open game of football in the traditions of the Tally Cup at this stage, but because it is very tally-ho football. But yeah, you'd have to be fancying Cavan.
Yeah, Whelo, on paper, it is hard to make the Westmeath case. Not that they're a bad team. It's just that when you look at the talent on that Cavan team, like, you know, like you can forgive a team a bad spring or two. Like, it's shocking that they ended up in Division 4 with, like, the amount of talent they have, and so it is hard to make a case against a team, you know, which has, like, a forward line with McKiernan, Martin Riley, you know, the Smiths, etc. in there. Like, they're a serious football team.
They are, but you could argue that there is a little glitch there that, you know, maybe sometimes in their mindset. I thought, listen, they were the best team going into it, and, you know, I've watched them obviously because working on the Sunday game nights, and I saw the game against Fermanagh where they came out of the blocks and it looked like they were going to blow them out of the water, and then they kind of pulled up the handbrake a bit and left Fermanagh back into it, and they done similar against Sligo, you know, and Sligo got very competitive with them and asked a lot of questions of them. So they do have that great talent in terms of the spine of their team, and the likes of Paddy Lynch and Grode McKiernan, and Thomas Galligan is probably playing best football. He played better than he looks that he's in better shape than he was 2 years ago. And then you have the Smiths Killian as well. Clark, but then, you know, you look at the opposite side and you say, like, Westmeath fairly disposed of Offaly without any much fuss. You know, they have a good man marker in David Lynch, who will probably might pick up McKiernan. You know, Sam McCarthy and Sam Duncan have been very good for them. Yeah, Ronan O'Toole has been good at centre forward, and then you have Heslin, obviously, and Lorcan Dolan inside. So, like, they do have good quality players, Westmeath, and they've been extremely competitive all year. And Cooney's done a very good job. So, you know, if just the fact that Cavan can lose concentration and go through phases in games, I think is going to keep Westmeath in this, and it will be a tight game. But I'd still think Cavan probably have enough quality, too much quality, particularly in their forward line, that's going to get them over the line.
Yeah. Would you agree, Eamonn? You're tipping a Cavan victory here?
Hard coming after Ciaran. He's it all covered by the time you come in, Mikey. Yeah, no, look, I feel the exact same way I felt from the start that Cavan are the team to beat in the competition. The only thing I would say about them is, as Ciaran said there, they can play in fits and starts, and particularly when they get ahead in the game, it's almost like they lose a bit of concentration and they can let the other team back into it. But I was at the semi-finals and I was very taken with Westmeath. I thought they're very balanced outfit. They do have the man markers at the back. Jack Smith who's a dub playing down there. I thought he was absolutely outstanding cornerback, and he could pick up one of the dangerous inside guys for Cavan. Kevin Maguire, I imagine, will be on Paddy Lynch. He's a very good man marker as well. Ray Cannell in midfield is a good player. Ronan O'Toole, Luke Loughlin, John Heslin, Larkin Dolan, Sam McCarthy is excellent. So Westmeath are very balanced as well. So it wouldn't shock me if Westmeath won. I think that Cavan probably, even having the winning experience of a couple of years ago and winning the Ulster Championship and having that kind of a bond will stand to them. But for both teams, is it Westmeath's third game in Croke Park this year?
Yeah.
It's
They played Kildare. They played Kildare. Obviously, they've played Offaly in the semi-final. Yeah.
It's Westmeath's third game in Croke Park this year after the Cavan's third game as well after the semi-final and the league final against Tipperary. So it's fantastic that these teams are getting all the extra games, getting so many extra championship games, getting to play in Croke Park. Again, I think it's going to be a very even contest. It wouldn't shock me if Westmeath won, but at the same time, you probably feel that it is Cavan's to lose.
Yeah. For the record, I think Cavan will win as well. We'll leave it at that. Just to say good luck to the minors of Mayo and Galway, who are playing a Friday night minor football final in the Hyde tomorrow, which is novel. And after the hurling final, the success of packing out Nolan Park for the minor final, perhaps moving it away from that quote-unquote curtain raiser role on Ireland final day mightn't be a bad idea. So just mention that. And look, it's a big weekend of football. Hope everybody enjoys it, and hope everybody is looking forward to a Kerry Galway final at the end of it.
We like all times.
Yeah, obviously you can watch these games on RTE2 and you can listen to them on RTE Radio 1, or you can follow them online at the RTE website and the RTE News app. So thank you to Whelo, thank you to Eamonn, thank you to Rory, and we will be back on Monday. Thanks very much. See you then.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it.